So I was asked about this battery plate here and if I could make a video explaining kind of what it is and how it works. So I'm going to do that. I have to apologize if there's any background noise. I'm using a shotgun mic to try to minimize that, but my AC's out, so I got a portable unit. I can't turn it off or it's going to become dangerously hot in here. So I'll do the best I can to edit out the noise, but apologies if it gets annoying, I understand. But anyway, so this battery plate, I'm going to show you kind of what's going on with it. So this is a rig, and this plate here is kind of the heart of the system. So this is a small rig plate, and one of the reasons that I really like this is it's got a number of outputs, and it has actually an on and off switch. So this red button right here is the on and off switch. So what that means is you can tap out everything you need. So I put a block on top of here, so all my power outputs are there, but then you can put a battery in and just turn it off as you need. Now, the reason initially that I got this plate is because, number one, I didn't have any V-mounts. Now I have, a couple different sizes, but at the time I didn't have any. And two, I was trying to get this thing on a gimbal, and I could not because this was too long, which put the weight too forward. So, my thinking was, well, I can get these little small batteries, put them on here, and then put this back here, and that would minimize the the back end size of the rig, which it did, but I gave up on flying this thing on a gimbal for other reasons. It's not practical because you have to take off the monitor. So if I turn it this way, this monitor is it's great for normal use, but you'd have to take it off to fly on a gimbal because the balance just doesn't work. So I gave up on that. But this is still extremely economical because you can go from these these smaller ones here all the way to these kind of big jumbo sizes, and they really don't cost them. I think this one was $50. So I still like this option. Now, of course, I have this, and the reason that I like this is because these specifically, small rig, I don't really know if this is the only one that does it. It has actually an input, so it's a USB-C. I believe it's an input and an output, so you can actually tap out of it. But what I do is I plug in a power cord, basically a USB, to a wall jack. And what that lets me do is actually run this indefinitely because, as I've said in another video, I do not run the camera off of external power. The battery's in here, and one of the things I really love about the GH6 is that you can actually run it off this blue cable here. You can actually run it off power. So you can run this thing just on a USB-C cord. Now, the reason I would never run my cameras off external power is if, as soon as you press that record button, if at any point you lose power, it's going to corrupt the file. I've had this happen, and you're going to lose everything since you hit the record button. So this way, if I lose power, everything else, the whole rig, right, everything else will shut off, like the monitor, the motor for the follow focus. But so what? I could just fix that, push a wire back in or swap out the battery. But the video file is safe. So that's why I will always separate those two things. But the entire rig runs off of a back plate, right? So with these, it goes directly onto here like that. With these, you put in your, whatever battery, and it's just like a V-mount. You just plug it in like that. I will tell you, one of the downsides is it takes two to run the rig, which means you cannot hot swap. So you cannot pull one off, replace it, pull the other one off, replace that, and kind of keep going. And the ability to keep this thing plugged in and going for a long time is the reason that I eventually moved over to V-mount. One of the big pros to V-mounts is they can push out a lot of amperage. For this rig, it's not necessary. These do perfectly fine. If you're running like high-powered lights, then V-mounts and gold mounts are definitely preferable, sometimes even necessary, because these might work for like your 60, 100 watt lights, something like that, maybe 200. But once you get to the big boys, these just don't have the juice. They don't have the amperage. So you'll need, some kind of dedicated V-mount or gold mount battery. But for a camera rig, you just don't need that much amperage. So two of these will run this whole rig perfectly fine. But again, you cannot, there's no inputs on here, there's only outputs. So that's the reason that I eventually switched over to this, because again, I can just use a wall mount on a power station or something. It doesn't have to be all the way to the wall. I can just put some kind of power generator. It's like a solar generator or a power station, whatever you want to call it. And then I can plug that into here, and this feeds the rig and feeds the internal battery on the camera. And I can go, if I'm wall powered, indefinitely. If I'm limited by the solar generator or power station, then that is what it is. But still, I think that these are a really good value, because you can also use this for your lights. Now, some of them have things built in, these kind of V-mount things on the lights themselves. I know the Amarans and Aperture will usually come with some sort of plate like this, but they don't all. So it's nice to have your own. It's got the same connections, right? So if all you have is like a straight V-mount plate on your light, and that's the only source, well, this will take care of that. So if you don't have one of these are great. These are very economical. You can buy a bunch of them. You can swap them as needed. You can have a whole bag full of them for, not much money, especially if you get them on sale. Now, there is another option. If you can't, for some reason, put anything on the back here, and this is something that I just got. It's a belt clip V-mount. So basically, you put the V-mount here, right? Now, again, this thing does not have any inputs, so that's going to be a downside to this. Is you can't remotely run this, because let's say you want to put it on a gimbal, and for some reason yours works. You don't have any bouncing issues, but you have to take basically everything off of here to get this thing back far enough on the gimbal to balance properly. Okay, so you can take this thing, put your V-mount on it, or gold mount, whatever you use, and then you can tap out to the camera, right? So one of the downsides is that on here, again, no outputs, so you can't do that. But you can only run basically the camera with this, because you only have one input that's going to accept power, because all the power comes from these right here, these little contacts here. This doesn't give you those contacts, so you can't run the entire back plate. You can only run, like, say, the camera. But if you're just running a stripped down rig and all you need to run is the camera, then this will be another power option. Doesn't really compare to these two things, but I wanted to throw that in there rather than make a whole video on just this thing. I'll toss that in here. That's one other option you can have for powering your rig. But this is simple. This is a NANLITE. I'll let you see the name here if you want to pause it. That's the product. And it actually works well. I mean, I use this for a while. Again, the only reason I stopped using this is because there's no way to keep this running on wall power. So here, you have to change batteries, and you can't hot swap, so you have to turn off all your accessories. Again, the camera can keep running because I keep the internal battery in, but at some point I ran into a situation where I had to turn off the power to the rig in order to swap the batteries. So I solved that by doing this, and now I can plug it in and run it indefinitely. So great option. A couple downfalls, but if you're just trying to be economical, you know, and you already have a bunch of these, then this battery plate is actually going to do a lot of what you need. Not everything, but I think it's definitely something to have in your bag, because if you only have one of these and something happens to it, you know, you're always going to have some of these, you know, in your kit. And you can have this, and you can, you know, at least maybe hopefully get through the shoot, and then deal with your bad battery later. So more options is good. Economical, works well. So that's the explanation for this battery plate.